Jo Momma is a really ugly, fat beast of a woman, and an outlaw boss in Oddworld Stranger's Wrath, who's got a foul temper due to her hormones going a little off kilter. Although simply one of the many outlaw bosses in the game, Jo Momma is actually potentially the most important member of outlaw society that's been seen. Living up to her name, she is supposedly the mother of a lot of the outlaws you fight throughout the game. Hence her name. To the outlaws, she is literally everyone's mama. She herself, much like her children, is an outlaw figure committing illegal acts, and as a result is wanted by the Clacker authorities dead or alive. To me, she seems to be reminiscent and perhaps a parody of real life outlaw figures, or more specifically Ma Barker, who became a figure in popular culture as supposedly running the Barker Carpis gang of outlaws in the 1930s. The story goes that she was a ruthless woman who was a criminal mastermind organising her son's crimes as the leader and key planner of the group. Although this portrayal of her has been ingrained into the public consciousness, such as through films and songs, it's since been thought that this reputation may actually be unwarranted. While she was definitely an accomplice somewhat to their activities, there's apparently no evidence to suggest that she was a mastermind or their leader or anything like that. It has been said that the FBI perpetuated the idea of Ma Barker leading the gang due to her being killed during the crossfire of a shootout between them and her youngest son Fred Barker, who also died, as it was thought that it would look bad for the FBI to have shot dead someone who was just an old woman. Their director, J. Edgar Hoover, described her as the most vicious, dangerous and resourceful criminal brain of the last decade. However, Harvey Bailey, a notorious bank robber who apparently knew the Barkers well, said that she couldn't plan breakfast, let alone a criminal enterprise. Alvin Carpis, who is thought by some to have been the true leader of the gang, said, "The most ridiculous story in the annals of crime is that Ma Barker was the mastermind behind the Carpis Barker gang. She wasn't a leader of criminals or even a criminal herself." I just looked on YouTube and coincidentally one of the old films that's been done about her was uploaded 3 weeks ago from when I write this. And I haven't watched it, but I'm looking at the comments and it's really interesting how many people just take the film and the idea of her being a ruthless gangster as fact, which is fine of course, but I just find it kind of sad that, you know, for all we know she might have just been completely in the background or whatever, just a kind mother looking after her sons and that kind of thing, but people just think she was like a cruel, heartless woman, you know? And obviously she might have been that, but I just find it kind of sad that the media and organisations can so effectively, regardless of known truth, decide how someone is viewed or cause people to perceive things with such certainty. It's so easy for people to be made out to be something they're not. In contrast to the depiction of a mastermind, Alvin Carpus described Ma Barker's role with the gang by saying, "She knew we were criminals, but her participation in our careers was limited to one function. When we travelled together, we moved as a mother and her sons. What could look more innocent?" So multiple sources indicate that the popular image of Ma Barker is simply a myth. Despite this, the idea of a motherly gangster has endured and inspired many pieces of media and characters within them, including, I suspect, Jo Momma. I assume so anyway just by the name, even just the format of the name, but of course also because much like the famous depiction of Ma Barker, Jo Momma acts as a ruthless crime matriarch who leads her own criminal operations with her outlaw sons. Although she is immensely harsh to her children, frequently abusing them, she also shows some motherly tendencies and does her best to keep them all fed. This resulted in several cooking accidents that have resulted in her oven mitt being fused to her hand, which sounds quite painful. The reason she is constantly wearing this glove is because she can't take it off, as it has been melded to her flesh. This just further adds to her image as an outlaw mother, which is complemented further by the rest of her outfit, a polka dot cooking apron and fuzzy slippers, as well as her choice of weaponry. In a game she's seen wielding a trusty frying pan to whack stranger with, but rendered art shows her with a rolling pin instead. Overall, she gives off the vibe to me of like a stereotypical 1950s or 60s housewife, even sporting the stereotypical pointy 60s female glasses. She looks like that character from Monsters Inc. Concept art highlights further details of her appearance, including, from what I can tell, I think it says she wears a rain scarf wrapped around her, although I'd personally call it a shawl, which ironically I'd say is actually more detailed in the game itself, or at least the HD version of it, where it's a more bluey colour with a nice pattern on it, than it is in the rendered pictures of her, where it's more plain and simply a cream colour. She also has what looks to be described as a childhood bow, which I guess is just something she's had since she was a child, which I think it says is stained, which naturally it would be if she's had it for so long. And Jo Momma in many pictures appears to potentially require the aid of a thick walking stick, which makes sense judging by her overworked hunched back and a detail hidden in the game by her slippers and abnormal toe, perhaps further hindering her ability to walk somewhat. Hanging from her apron at all times is a bottle revealing her alcoholic tendencies, which you can imagine she must need, having to take care of so many children. And finally, but maybe most gruesomely, in this concept art, she has what looks to have been labelled as Deaf Young Skull. So I'm not entirely certain what to make of that. Is that like saying she has the skull of one of her children that died when they were young attached to her? I'm not sure. But if that is the case, it's kind of weird and pretty grim, though potentially shows further that she truly cares for her children. Perhaps in a similar manner to the slick queen Skillia, who wears jewellery, why do I find that word so hard to say, jewellery, who wears jewellery to make up for the fact she's ugly, Jo Momma likewise wears jewellery, including a gold necklace, which is perhaps to add femininity to her otherwise quite unfeminine physique. Jo Momma appears to be an outlaw of the same subspecies as that of the Nailer class, except a female version of it, maintaining the massive build of them but with a more saggier body compared to the usual muscular form they have. And her horns, which feature gold earrings drilled into them, are facing down as opposed to the more aggressive, ready to maim horns of the male variety. Jo Momma is an incredibly unique enemy, not just in Stranger's Wrath, but in the whole Oddworld franchise, being one of the only female characters that has been seen in the entire series. However, there has been questions from what I've seen, and it even states this on the Oddworld wiki, that Jo Momma in the original Xbox version of the game spoke in exactly the same voice as the typical outlaw enemy. And this was then changed in the HD remake of Stranger's Wrath, where they digitally altered the voice to make her sound more female. However, I believe this to be false, and a result of a bit of a mix-up potentially. I've had a look at footage of the original Xbox game, and Jo Momma has exactly the same female voice as she does in the HD remake. So I consider the idea that she used to have a male voice to simply be a myth, likely due to the fact that her voice is the same voice as the standard outlaw and it has simply been digitally altered to sound female. It's just this has always been the case and wasn't something that changed between versions. The fact that Jo Momma is female is very strange, considering it's Oddworld, and it makes me wonder if she's essentially a queen of the outlaws. But I doubt it, as the casual nature with which she's dealt in and the fact she's never referred to as a queen suggests to me outlaws aren't a super species like Mudokons or Glukkons with a queen and have quite a lot of mothers that reproduce in a standard manner as opposed to laying eggs. Her class seems to simply be outlaw mother as opposed to outlaw queen. Speaking of which, did you know that seemingly Jo Momma has a relative in Oddworld Munch's Oddysee? Indeed, in fact, she's apparently a journalist, as one of the writers of The Daily Deception is called Jo Momma, whom we can naturally only assume is a relation of Jo Momma. Maybe it's her sister or something. They work at The Daily Deception alongside Seymour Butts and Jabba the Hutt, as well as some real people that worked on Oddworld. I was about to say it's nice that, unlike Jo Momma managed to avoid making a career out of doing wrong, but then I remembered they're a journalist. Now on to Jo Momma's operations as seen in the game. While a lot of the outlaws I've been researching have really solid plans that make sense, Jo Momma's does make sense, but there's a lot of weird stuff about it if you ask me. She sets up a construction site near the town of Buzzerton to excavate a massive ship, which just raises a whole ton of questions for me. Firstly, what is this ship? What is it doing in this massive desert hole? Did there used to be water here long ago? Maybe Secto Springs operations entrapping the Mongo Valley water dried the area out, which would be very good foreshadowing and world building that I've never heard anyone mention before. Or was this some kind of land ship? I don't think the answer to these questions is directly given in the game, but I could be wrong. But it's certainly an interesting thing to think about, I'd say. I wouldn't be surprised if the Clacker's casual background conversations give some insight into it though. One reason Jo Momma seems to be doing this perhaps, is because she gets to operate her favourite equipment and construction machinery, the pile driver, which she isn't afraid to use to kill anyone that tries to get in the way of her operations. Her plan, I guess, makes sense logistically, you know, just digging through an old wreck looking for treasures, but either way it surprises me that the Clackers have such a high bounty on her. I mean, to be fair, she's probably done a load of other crimes, and ultimately she is the mother of tons of outlaws causing trouble, so I guess it's understandable she's wanted. But her excavating operation doesn't seem to be as bad as, for example, the looting Duke, taxing the Clackers for water, or Filthy Hands Floyd robbing their supply trains. Jo Momma's operation seems tame compared to them and out of the way, but I guess if she's not meant to be doing it, then she's got to be stopped. The shipwreck is round the back of the Buzzerton sewer treatment plant, and a stranger has to get the assistance of the local Clacker sewer workers to get access through this place. Once in the sewers, he's first greeted with slegs before getting closer to the shipwreck and beginning to encounter Jo Momma's boys. Eventually, Stranger makes his way to the excavation site and finds Jo Momma. Here's how IGN suggests you take her in. Use the broken ship as cover against the band of thieves, and pop out to shoot them with the sting bees. A claws type enemy will ambush you from the right side, so use a thud slug to knock him back, and a zap fly to knock him out. Bounty him, and another soon follows. Watch the high sides of the battlefield to find a few random enemies with high-powered guns. Go into hiding near the start on ground level, and use chip punks to lure enemies away and blast them. Go up on the ship again and blast the lower left barrel to reveal an excellent hiding place that is secured and covered from enemy fire. Go up the elevator platform after activating it and jump off into the cubbyhole. Jump down onto the slope and double jump onto the platform with the two enemies. Kill the two enemies here and shoot the enemy above to silence him. Make your way back up to the elevator platform and go up top. Take care of the remaining enemies up here and shoot the blue activator across the gap to take the electricity away from the tightrope and begin walking across it. Jo Momma is the only enemy remaining. Shoot some fuzzles over to her to keep her occupied while you cross the gap, and melee attack her several times to knock her stamina down low. She'll be dingy for a while, so grab her at leisure, alive. Jump down and go through the tunnel down below to reach the town and cash out your bounty for the living Jo Momma. If you capture her alive as described, you get a whopping 800 moolah, but you get half that 400 moolah if you bring her in dead. I've always liked her name being the joke, you know, even Stranger in his dialogue makes the joke something like, I slapped Jo Momma real hard, or something like that he says.
I slapped Jo Momma so hard my hand hurts.
Jo Momma is certainly one of the most distinct enemies in Oddworld Stranger's Wrath, and the fact that she isn't in any other Oddworld game prompts the question, where's Jo? Jo who? Jo Momma.
Hello, follow me. Yo